In the fourth day's account, Genesis never uses the ordinary words sun and moon. It calls them the greater and lesser lights. They rule day and night and mark signs, seasons, days, and years. Why introduce the sky's two most obvious lights by office, rather than by the ordinary words? And what does it mean for created lights to rule? The answer begins with the verbs. God makes them, places them, and gives them work. In a world where the heavens could be worshipped, that language is not evasive. It is the point. To see why, we will keep three layers distinct: what the passage says, what its ancient setting illuminates, and what later readers infer. Day 1 established light and darkness, and named them day and night. Days 2 and 3 established sky, sea, dry land, and seed-bearing life. The spaces are ready. Now day 4 begins a second movement through the same world. It gives the realm of day and night visible lights to illuminate, divide, and rule it. Listen to how often God remains the acting subject. Genesis chapter 1, beginning in verse 14. God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs to mark seasons, days, and years, and let them be for lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light to the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. God speaks. God makes. God sets. God assigns the work. God sees that it is good. That chain of action is the passage's first answer. The lights possess real authority, but none of it begins with them. The Hebrew word translated lights is me-o-rokt, luminaries, light-bearers, or lamps. It is related to light, but it is not the same word as the light of day 1. Day 1 establishes light. Day 4 appoints things that bear light within the sky. And Genesis does know the ordinary Hebrew words for sun and moon. Later, in Joseph's dream, this same book speaks plainly of the sun, the moon, and 11 stars. So there is no book-wide rule forbidding their names. Here, at the moment God gives them work, the text chooses functional descriptions. It identifies them by office. The Hebrew wording also contains a small surprise that English can hide. God first makes the two great luminaries. Then the text distinguishes the great luminary for the rule of the day from the small luminary for the rule of the night. English Bibles often say greater and lesser, turning the words into a direct comparison. The Hebrew says great and small. It never tells us the unit of measurement. In the scene's earth-facing perspective, the sun is assigned to the day and the moon to the night. Great and small probably describe their perceived prominence more naturally than physical diameter. But Genesis never tells us exactly what the adjectives measure. Then come the stars. The Hebrew is terser still. And the stars. In cultures where stars could represent divine powers, Genesis folds them into one final phrase of God's workmanship. But that historical comparison needs care. Across the ancient Near East, the heavens were not religiously neutral. Akkadian Shamash, cognate with Hebrew Shemesh, was the sun god. Ugaritic Yarik, cognate with Hebrew Yarayak, was a moon god. Stars and planets could represent divine powers, and their movements could carry political and religious meaning. Genesis shares that world's attention to the sky, but presents a different hierarchy. The scene contains no enthroned sun or moon god, and it does not present the stars as a divine council. God does not negotiate with the lights or defeat them. He makes them, places them, and gives them bounded jurisdictions. That de-divinizing effect is clear. What we cannot prove is that Genesis is attacking one particular Babylonian story, or that every ancient culture read the heavens in the same way. The safer conclusion is also the more important one. Genesis speaks against the grain of astral religion, what others might worship, fear, or consult as a power over fate. Genesis describes as created and commissioned. The lights rule, but they rule because God appoints them. What then does their rule mean? The passage gives two related kinds of work. The great and small luminaries rule day and night. The lights also serve as markers for signs, appointed times, days, and years. Those statements should not be collapsed. Genesis does not say the sun and moon reign over human destiny, or even that they rule seasons and years. Their light and regular courses govern the experienced realms of day and night. Their observable movement makes recurring time readable. The World English Bible says, signs to mark seasons, days, and years. The Hebrew leaves the list more open, for signs, for appointed times, and for days and years. Appointed times is useful because mo'adim means fixed occasions and can include both recurring seasons and sacred times of worship. The moon's phases can mark months. The sun's course can mark days and years. Together, the heavenly lights make a calendar possible. In Enuma Elish, Marduk arranges the stars, the year, the months, and the moon's phases within a divine cosmos. Genesis shares the concern for celestial timekeeping, but here the timekeepers are things God makes and commands. Later Jewish texts draw out that implication. Sirach praises the moon for marking changing and sacred seasons. Jubilees expands day 4 into months, festivals, Sabbaths, sabbatical years, and jubilees. Those are later readings with their own calendar concerns, but they show how naturally this verse opened toward worship as well as agriculture. And what about signs? The word can mean a marker, token, or meaningful indication. In the ancient Near East, celestial signs could include omens, so Genesis should not be made to say calendar dates only. But the verse does not grant the lights independent power to fix a person's character or destiny. It places every sign within a sky God created and governs. Basil of Caesarea later made a similar distinction. He accepted useful observations of the sun, moon, weather, and seasons, while rejecting the claim that the planets distribute human fates. That distinction fits the passage. The sky can be read without becoming a rival scripture. The lights can mark time without owning the people who live within it. A calendar explains what the lights do, but it sharpens the obvious puzzle. How can Genesis have days before the sun? The answer begins with the chapter's largest pattern. Day 1 establishes light and darkness, day and night. Day 4 appoints luminaries to illuminate, separate, and rule them. Day 2 establishes sky and waters. Day 5 will fill them with flying and swimming creatures. Day 3 establishes land and vegetation. Day 6 will fill the land with animals and human beings. The first 3 days order realms. The next 3 populate or administer those realms. That correspondence helps explain why day and night already exist before the greater and lesser lights appear in the narrative. Day 4 is completing the work of day 1. The pattern is strong. What it proves about chronology is not. Readers disagree over whether the days are ordinary days, a literary arrangement, or an analogy for divine work. Nor does Genesis explain the physics of the first light. Early Christian readers recognized the difficulty. Theophilus and Basil took the sequence theologically. Vegetation appears before the sun, so the sun cannot be mistaken for the ultimate source of life. Augustine admitted that days before the sun lie beyond ordinary experience. Those are later interpretations, not explanations, written into verse 14. What the narrative establishes is theological order, not physical mechanism. Light precedes the luminaries in the story, and the luminaries receive their place and work from God. Why, then, does Genesis call them the greater and lesser lights? Not because their identities are secret, and not because Genesis never uses the words sun and moon. In this scene, Genesis defines them by service. They enter the story not as divine personalities, but as created luminaries with assigned offices. Great and small probably describe their relative prominence as people experience the sky. The following clauses, not the adjectives themselves, assign their jurisdictions, one for the day, one for the night. Their rule is genuine but delegated. They illuminate. They divide. Their courses turn time into something creatures can observe and inhabit. Signs, appointed times, days, and years. They govern time as servants within creation. They do not govern creation as gods. Before human beings arrive in the story, God has already ordered the rhythms they will inhabit. Day and night, work and rest, ordinary days and appointed times. A year that turns and returns. The passage does not ask us to escape created time, and it does not hand our fate to the stars. It asks us to receive time as part of an ordered world, a gift, a limit, and eventually a place for worship. That leaves a quieter question. Do we live as if time is something we own, or as something entrusted to us within a creation we did not make? With the lights in place and time made readable, Day 5 fills the sky and waters with living creatures. And among them, Genesis singles out the great sea creatures, not as rival powers, but as creatures God makes and blesses. Why does that wording matter? That is the tension in Genesis 1, verses 20 through 23.